Hi, I'm Mal from Money Study, and we're bringing you another episode in our Take 10 Challenge, where I challenge you to learn something about money in 10 minutes every day. And we're up to number 10. Where should my savings go? I've been figuring out I can actually create a bit of savings. Then what do I do with it? Before we go on with the answers, there's my disclaimer. It's all about facts, about figures, about information. It's not advice. Now, this is where it gets confusing. We identify that we've got some spare money and we're going to put this money somewhere, and then we go, oh, I don't know what to do with it. And there are so many choices, and this is where we need to, bit by bit, it's our knowledge that's going to help us to ascertain where should this money really belong. It's going to be different for all of us, different situations, different times of our life, different needs, different risks, and so it goes on. And so, number one, these are not in order of importance. These are not in order of importance. I'm just going to go through them. But the first one you can see there is a pretty typical one where if we've got debt, perhaps the thought of reducing debt, we're going to do quite a few topics here on debt, but if we've got a debt, then perhaps we should look at getting rid of it, because indeed we are paying interest on it. And as we know from our little sessions on compound interest on debt is sort of working back to the front to compare to compound interest on savings. So if we've got an interest rate that is getting higher and higher, perhaps because the Reserve Bank's been raising interest rates, that debt could indeed be becoming more and more expensive to maintain. And remembering that we don't pay tax on debt, meaning that if you have an investment and it makes you 10%, then if you are earning, 100 grand a year or 80 grand a year or even 60 grand a year, you're in that 32.5 cents of the dollar tax bracket. And we'll talk about tax brackets in another session as well. But basically, we're losing nearly a third of our income in tax. Hence, if you earn 10%, then really you're only earning, you're earning less than 7%. And if you've got a mortgage that's now 6 to 7%, then you start to look and say, well, hang about, can my investment after tax give me more than what I could be earning by literally just paying this debt down? Remembering that paying down a debt, of course, is also risk-free. So debt can be certainly a good thing. And of course, once the debt's gone, we've freed up some money. Emergency funding, I'm going to do a session just on having an emergency fund. I think it's absolutely imperative that you could have a fallback so that you can have some money if an emergency happens. Yep, no problem. We've got enough of a buffer in our savings to pull some money out for an emergency. But I will be doing a session on that. And of course, that emergency fund could indeed just be in a bank account, but it's a special savings account, whatever it may be, for an emergency. And of course, bank accounts, we did that in the previous session, and we can have numerous ones of those, and we could be moving the money from our savings from one to another, depending on what we're trying to achieve. A little side hustle. Now, you may decide, if I had a little bit of extra money, I could set myself up into doing whatever it may be. You may have a bit of an entrepreneurial flair there, in which case starting a little business from some of your spare cash, you might think, a bit risky. Well, any business is a risk. It just comes down to if we can start small, build and make some money, could that money that you've spent on setting yourself up in a business make you more money for your time and effort, compared to having that money sitting in a bank account or something similar. And if you have a lot of fun with it as well. Again, we'll be doing sessions on entrepreneurs later on. Super. Boy, oh boy, we're going to have sessions on super till your eyes bleed, because there's so many advantages. There are disadvantages as well, of course, with super, but it could be a case that we use super for the tax advantages. Could be because it's a lower fee perhaps than another investment, might have more choices and so forth, but it could be the fact that we get a tax deduction for putting our money in. Could be a fact that we put it into our partner's super because you're getting closer to age pension and money in your younger partner super doesn't count as an asset. There's all sorts of reasons why we might be wanting to use super as somewhere to place it. And the older we get, then generally speaking, super becomes more and more an appropriate investment because we're not locking it up for years to come if you're younger. There are all sorts of apps now, things like Raise and CommSec, and the list goes on. That's not a recommendation. I'm just telling you that they're trying to give you an example of an app. But what these apps are is literally you can access investments through them and literally just open up an account with these people, and they will then turn around and place your money into whatever appropriate investment, the sort of thing that you are aiming for. Can be quite easy. Generally speaking, the smaller account balances, the fees can be quite expensive. The more you've got in there, the cheaper it gets as a percentage. So again, like everything, check the fine print, check the terms and conditions. This next row, gotta love this. ETF shares, managed funds, LICs, warrants, CFDs. These are basically all relying on things that are effectively the share market. It's just different ways of accessing the share market, meaning that we are basically buying shares in companies, hoping that company's value will go up, or it might pay us some profits as dividends. But there's different ways of accessing them, and each one of these have got pros and cons. Don't worry about the terminology just yet. Don't worry what they mean just yet. We're going to get onto it, but it's just going to take a bit of time to get there. Of course, gold. We can talk about having physical gold as a hedge, perhaps, against inflation. They say that a toga. If for a certain amount of gold, you could have bought a toga in Roman times, and now you could have bought yourself an Armani suit for the same amount of gold. So it sort of keeps, doesn't matter what inflation does, the gold tends to keep its value. It doesn't generate any income. There's no interest on gold, but it can be something that people like to have as a bit of security when things are really, when the world's becoming a bit wobbly. Similarly, silver might have some uses. Again, we're going to do a search on every single one of these in the future there. Investment property, probably one of the well-known investments in Australia. It's like, you've got a bit of money, buy yourself an investment property. I will give you the warts and all on that. Certainly, investment property have got some great advantages, and certainly has worked well for tens of thousands of people, there's no doubt about that. But I can also give you just as many people that it hasn't worked for. It all comes down to this business of what is appropriate for you. What is appropriate for you? And dare I say, appropriate for the cycles. Everything goes in cycles in finance. And so at some point you may think, great, but it might be you've just chosen the absolute wrong time to get into it. But anyway, we'll go through investment property. Collectibles, things like having art collections, coin collections, stamp collections, and even wine collections. People have done very, very well out of collections, and some of the stranger collection, like old vintage cars, perhaps. Or I reckon the funniest one I ever saw was a man had a paperweight collection, and it was actually worth a lot of money. And I thought, who even uses a paperweight these days? And quite frankly, who would want to save them? But anyway, I'm not here to espouse the benefits of collecting paperweights, but it's interesting. The collectibles can be quite good. Obviously, in those sort of things, there's knowing what knowing what you are collecting, being a bit of an expert in it. So, wow, I mean, because we haven't even touched on things like offset accounts against your mortgage. We haven't talked about all sorts of things that you might be doing between your family or other. We're going to go on forever here. But what I want to try and do here is to say, yep, there are lots of places to park your money. And the only way we'll ever know about the best place to park our money is to understand them. And it's got to be an investment that you understand, so A, you can get some sleep at night, and B, so that you know when to get in and when to get out. Is it appropriate to keep these things? I've had I think, apart from I think I've actually done all of those. I haven't had a paperweight collection, and I'm not too sure my wine counts as a collection. I think it's more a lifestyle event, I think, the wine. But look, I've tried these things plus more, and it is a case that there's been times in my life where some of those has been more appropriate than others, and other times totally inappropriate to even consider. And I say my education has helped me over time. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but as I've got smarter with my finances, some of these things I wouldn't go back to, and I just have to wait until the time would be appropriate. Anyway, we're going to go through it one by one. We're going to get there with our 10 minutes a day. If you want to speed things up, of course, at any time, you're already halfway there, and you just want to know a bit more, you can always just book an appointment with us to have a bit of a chat. Talk to you on another session.